day 319 of the Ukrainian war map, also known as the Russo-Ukrainian War. Juzzy here, and today is another update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine. And as always, we'll start off with those Russian military losses, so as of the 8th of January. So Russia is currently sitting on 111,170 Russian military personnel losses, which is an additional 430 Russian personnel losses for the past 24 hours. Then we'll take a quick peek at the Russian hardware losses, so armored combat vehicles, 5 there, tanks 3, and artillery 3 losses as well. Then we'll move back to the map, and we'll start out in Russia again, as we sometimes do, this time in the Kursk Oblast, where the lights went off. So a transformer was hit and has been on fire was on fire for all of the night, apparently. So this is what Russia's country borders look like now, I suppose. So it's no longer just power outages for Ukraine, but also Russia now too. Then right next door in the Belgorod Oblast, so missile launches were noticed in this region earlier this morning. But then, just an hour ago or so, Belgorod air defenses were active as well, this time in the Veluki district, which is hiding just north of the Luhansk Oblast there. Then momentarily, we'll move across to Russia's ally, Belarus, where Russian forces transferred another train echelon, this time of manpower, as 700 Russian soldiers arrived at the Vitebsk railway station. And with Putin sending hardware and personnel here, lots and lots, it seems to be in some ways an attempt to bully Belarus and Uncle Luka to stay involved in the war. And perhaps this is Putin's way of holding a tight grip on Belarus as much as possible. Then we'll move back to the Ukraine map and we'll start out again in the Donbass, in particular the Luhansk Oblast there. So having a look at Dobrova. So here it is. Now you can see it's in a bit of a grey zone. So the map is updated to show that Ukraine has done quite the push in the last couple of days there. In fact, even in the last day. And even then, this map isn't up to date because Dobrova is actually expected to be all but liberated by Ukraine now. And the Ukrainian forces are even going one step further, where they're actually repelling Russian assaults from this location right now as we speak. And it's interesting, this location here, because the next stop is now literally Crimea, of which there's already been a number of Ukrainian units around the Crimea forest area to the south and southeast for a number of weeks now, reconnaissance units. As Crimea is quite the strategic gateway for taking back Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, which I'll zoom out and we'll see those two right here. So I very much look forward to the upcoming days or so and seeing what plays out here. Oh, and also, this isn't exactly a liberation photo, but perhaps a photo of things to come. So in Rubizhne, so there it is, next to Severodonetsk and Crimea, sort of smack bang in the middle behind the highway, the AFU clearly have high confidence for liberating this town as soon as possible too. And what a massive blow to Russia all of this would be. I really cannot help but salivate over all of that. Then moving a little bit more easterly, in fact just southwest of the city of Luhansk in the Luhansk Oblast. So here it is hiding there. There were in fact explosions at a natural gas pipeline. But that's not all that happened in this region. So in true partisan fashion, some pro-Ukrainian partisans living in the region blew up a section of railway in the Novy Aidar area, just north of the Luhansk city as well. As these partisans, of which are certainly aware that taking out railways is like taking out the really Russia's legs in its war machine that is heavily reliant on railway to conduct its military operations in Ukraine. Then we'll move back a little bit west, and so at Kramatorsk. Now, there were explosions reported in Kramatorsk. Another military target was hit. Now, for listeners only that treat this video like a podcast, when I say military target, I say it facetiously in quotations. Then we'll move to a very hotly contested region here, so Soledar, where it seems Russia's claims of taking the settlement are shrinking by the minute on this day. So it started out with Russia claiming they took Soledar, followed up by saying they controlled the salt plant, the salt mines there, and now they're saying they control the south, but the center and east are disputed. So when we zoom in here, this is probably somewhat accurate. Though it still is a very fluid situation right now. Heavy battles are taking place in Soledar. It's not some distant artillery fire, but very much closer range small arms shootouts. For instance, in this Ukrainian footage, it shows the close quarters combat, or rather in the audio feed, you hear a lot of firearms pop off. Then we'll zoom out for a tick and go a little bit south to Bakhmut, the other heavily contested region here. So battles rage in the vicinity, really northeast of Bakhmut, but Russian troops remain far from actually encircling Bakhmut. And even if they did, they'd be like a dog chasing a car. They wouldn't really know what to do with it. As sometimes, well, quite often, I think I find, Russia encircles the settlement they're looking to take, but they don't know how to reach that last step a lot of the time and take it all out. Oh, and for some updated context in this region now, so Prigozhin, the head of the Russian Wagner fighting group, actually stated recently that he wanted these areas like Soledar and Bakhmut for its resources and, quote, underground cities. And, maybe the Ukrainian forces will indeed grant Prigozhin with some permanent residence in one of those underground cities he loves so much. But back to Bakhmut, something went wrong with a Russians' frontal assault there today, where there were approximately 40 killed in action or wounded Russian soldiers as a result of those frontal assaults. But perhaps most importantly for this city now, we have seen the armed forces of Ukraine reinforcements arrive in Bakhmut. These are actually continued reinforcements, as not just Russia, but instead both sides have upped the ante, so to speak, in this region. Then just lastly for the Donbass today, somewhere in the eastern region here, you have a bit of a quick photo of a Lancet kamikaze drone. So this is a Russian kamikaze drone, hit a Ukrainian T-64 BV variant. Not that it matters too much right now. And as you can see, mainly minimal damage for that one, so good to see. Then we'll move across on the map. Let's see, next up to Zaporizhia. So just on the outskirts of the city, there was a Russian missile strike reported. There's also a drone that was shot down there as well. Then, a little bit further south, a couple of notable things coming out of Russian-occupied Melitopol. So it turns out that an ammo dump was hit and completely destroyed. Locals reported the detonations that continued deep into the night, as Melitopol got paid a visit by Mr. HIMARS. Then also, Russia continues to attempt to scale up right here, as they continue to bring echelons of new military equipment headed towards Melitopol, T-62s, these tanks, these ones. Why not T-90s? Why not the newest T-14 Armadas instead of these old 1960s era unmaintained Soviet rusty tanks? Oh, that's right. Russia doesn't really have any of those modern tanks in any sort of meaningful numbers. Never did, and at this rate, probably literally never will. Then we'll move down a little bit further south to occupied Crimea. Now, there were more explosions reported again in Jankoy. So that's this location here. There's airfields, bases, ammo dumps, you name it, they've got it here. Though I've got to say I'm surprised no Ukrainian kamikaze drones were sent to Sevastopol's way this day. I was hoping Ukraine would go for a fifth day in a row here, but perhaps the drones were more of a diversion tactic. In fact, way back on the 14th of April last year, this little red thing right here, so that's the sinking of the Russian flagship of the Black Sea, the Moskva, which Ukraine took out with its own indigenously developed Neptune missiles, whilst at the same time using the Bayraktar drone as a diversion tactic to successfully take out the $760 million ship. So good for them. Then we'll move across to just a little bit of news for the day. So Russia may be planning to mobilize as many as 500,000 Russian soldiers in the coming days, or about by the 15th of January, it was said, as per the comments by Ukraine's deputy military intelligence chief, Chernyak. And he also said that if Russia loses this time, with these new soldiers coming in, these 500,000 or so, then Putin's regime would surely collapse. And this in part could be true, could be likely, because reason being, Russia first threw 200,000 troops into the, quote, special military operation. Then when that didn't work out, they threw another 320,000 troops in September's 2022 mobilization call-up. Then now potentially another 500,000 this month. I mean, you've got to wonder what happened to the first 200k, then followed by the next 320k soldiers, especially if Russia is looking to go for a new round of 500,000. And I'm sure the Russian public won't like it. They didn't really like it at all when the 320k were called up back in September last year. In fact, I think it was 260,000 able-bodied Russian males left the city within the space of about 5 days after or during that call-up last year. And all of these numbers, it doesn't even include the shadow mobilization numbers that aren't officially reported by the Kremlin about how many Russian soldiers are officially going to war. So we've got the 200k, then the 320k, now approximately another 500k. It's likely to be tens to hundreds of thousands more actually mobilized. So add in officially another 500k to the mobilization in a conflict that Russia has made it illegal for Russian citizens to actually call a war. Surely there will be more than a few Russian civilians head scratching, just trying to understand the Russian narrative in terms of a non-war with such a great loss of Russian life. Then we'll move across to another military mobilization blunder for the Russian side, where these Russian mobilized lads are appealing to the defense minister and Putin himself. They're basically stating they've been trained as artillerymen, so not exactly for frontliners. But then after going to war, they're being ordered to take frontline positions as infantrymen. And in their appeal, yet another appeal, says that they were trained as the artillerymen, that's what they're here to do. Then they seem to say it's not correct or even legal to make them infantrymen on the front lines. Then in their bone-chilling last comment on this video, they say, quote, "We ask that you go into this matter. We're ready to complete objectives in line with your direct purpose." Unfortunately for them, their direct purpose was always to be frontline infantrymen, cannon fodder like so many others that were sent to this war. Oh, the naivety. And this is actually a bit of a common issue in the Russian army within Ukraine. Russian conscripts are listed as artillerymen or all sorts of other various roles, only to then realize when they go to war that there was only ever one single role available for them in the first place, right on the front line. You see, Russia doesn't only lie on the international political stage, but also lies to its very own citizens as well, as you can clearly see here too. Then in a bit of a funny to round it all off with, so this one here. Now, the Ukrainian armed forces have been pretty good at making turrets fly off tanks that they've hit, but this one perhaps takes the cake. So it's a T-62 tank, yet another old Soviet era tank, with its turret upside down on the tank, but they don't come that way. This one really does qualify for the turret flying championship. So it popped off, flew up high, came back down, just happened to land right on top of the tank from which it was a part. Although my personal favourite was, and always will be, shall be, the following one. So this is a bit of a video here, just sliding along correctly on the road, not steering off course, just chilling out. I love this one so much. So thanks for watching, guys. Please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button. Thanks again for all of the support. I see it all the time and I really do appreciate it so much to keep these videos going. And I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.